the media's had a dynamic impact on modern sport, and I want to talk to you about the difference it's made to individual sports. I don't mean sports where only individuals do them. I mean, like the impact it's had on tennis, on football, on cricket, these different individual sports. We're going to have a look at the impact it has on the performers in those sports. We're going to have a look at the impact it has also on spectators. Now, spectators quite likely to be you and I, for example. Maybe you are an elite performer, I don't know, but probably that's where we're going to come at it from. Now, the other thing I want to stress here is when we start now talking about individual sports and the impact of the media on individual sports, can I stress it is categorically important that we look at this through the evaluative structure. In other words, I want to look at the positive and the negative influence of the media, and that is exceptionally likely to be what I'm going to be asked about should this appear in my exam. So let's start off with some really lovely green positives. With the media involvement, we get new, exciting formats of sport. I'm thinking about the 100 in cricket. I'm talking about rule changes in badminton that make it more, let's say, television friendly. Going alongside that, we get updated rules. I mean, I've been following a bit of rugby union recently, and the number of rules that are changing there to make this a more intoxicating, entertaining game are really quite significant. We also get more frequent play. In other words, I can simply watch, engage, spend time on more matches than I could before the media was involved. We also get more international sport, if I just put int sport. So I can be on one day watching Man City play football in the Premier League in England, and then I might be watching some Argentinian women's football, for argument's sake. It gives me access to more and more and more. We also get a notion of player wealth. The players themselves become better off because money comes into the sport. This makes them what we might loosely call household names. Think about the sport that you enjoy yourself most. It's quite likely that that sport will have certain people that are really renowned because of their participation in that activity. We also get a bigger audience for the sport. Maybe this makes it more inspiring, perhaps. We also get, there's lots going on here. We get, for example, better officiating. Okay, and what I mean by better officiating is those officials, they might be supported by the tech that the media company provides. Let's say a television match official, for example. We also get a greater amount of investment in the sport. If we get investment in the sport can spend more money, standards of play can go up. We also having the notion of higher wages for players. If wages are higher, players and performers can be full-time and become better athletes. And we also get an improvement in facilities. So the stadium which we might go and visit to engage with these sports is really good. This might also lead to things like better player development and a better standard of play, which makes it all the more entertaining, right? I suppose. Better player development. Now, obviously I'm sort of leaning on that a little bit from a spectator's perspective as well. But this is not a whole rosy picture. There are negatives. This model comes with inequality built in. Why? Because only the most popular, often the most male sports become the ones that are shown, let's say, on TV. Sports themselves develop a model of over-reliance. They are reliant on the media company. And that leads to what we might loosely call media control, the media dictating when matches, competitions take place and when they don't. They might even intrude into other areas of this. It also makes you and me, assuming we're not the performers, the fans become consumers, become consumers. We're no longer fans, but we are there to be sold to. That's our role in this whole thing. Think about what that's like. The other factor here is that media companies have a vested interest in sensationalism, building up rivalries, making sort of like dichotomies and people not like each other. We've also got a decreased interest in minorities. So the media has a down arrow interest in minorities. So minority sports, let's say netball, for example, gets less and less interest because the big sports are taking all of that attention. We also lose the original formats. I mean, Test cricket is the one that springs to mind, not because we've lost it, but because it's being threatened, doesn't seem as important, and that leads overall to a loss of tradition of the sport. Now, I've written down a huge number of things there, but can you please see for me that is clearly an evaluative process that I've just gone through, okay? So evaluative in that nature. Now, where I want to go next is I want to go into the influence on performers. So if we think about a sports performer, what's the positive negative of this? And again, we can get up arrow more income. If I am a professional rugby player, for example, I'm more likely to make more money. That's going to mean that I'm more likely to be full-time, and that of course is going to help me in my life. This means that I'm going to get up arrow and improved earning potential. So I'm more likely to earn more money over the course of my career, and maybe then I can retire properly when I retire from sport itself. I'm also going to get that sort of notion of up arrow for fame and status. That's of course seen very positively. I could, as an elite performer, become a role model, and that of course comes with great benefits too. I might be able to sell my image rights. I might be able to develop personal sponsorship. Again, coming back to this notion of earning potential. I may have access to things like better facilities because maybe I can afford them. Okay, I might get access to better facilities, for example, and I might get access to the best coaches in the world. So these all seem really, really positive because the media has invested its money into these sports, and these performers benefit as a result of that. But there's also negatives. I've mentioned some of these already. We get a loss of privacy, this time for the individual. That's an issue, right? I mean, that's got to be difficult. People are very firmly in the public eye. And I'm not saying I feel sorry for people, because of course there's great benefits, but that's difficult. They might therefore suffer things like online abuse. The example of players like Rashford and Saka in the summer in 2021, after the England lost the penalties in the Euros, that would be a good example of that, right? These performers also experience an up arrow, more pressure to win, because it's actually, there's more on the game, there's more on the contest. Therefore, the pressure could lead to even sort of win at all cost type mentality. We also get errors, the mistakes that the performer makes, highlighted. They're shown in super slow motion. Isn't this player terrible because they gave this penalty away or whatever, or they didn't play well on this particular day? They also get, down arrow, less rest in off-season because there's pressure to keep going and to perform and to play in summer leagues or whatever it happens to be. And they also get pressure to play when injured. Pressure to play when injured because the events become so significant that having time off becomes more and more difficult to those individuals. So again, clearly evaluative in its nature, and that's ultimately what you're going to be asked to do. Now finally, I want to address the notion of the influence on spectators, and that's perhaps where you and I are more likely to come into this. We may well be administrators of the sport, we may well be sports performers, but we're pretty likely to be spectators. Well, the spectators benefit in green because they get those exciting formats. Isn't that great? I was at St Mary's Stadium watching some Premier League football recently. It wasn't so much the format, but there was pyrotechnics going off and amazing music and all this stuff, and it was there because the media was there. We've got these notion of new rules. This is kind of cool, right? We get more entertaining. We get more entertainment, so I'm going to simply say entertaining down there. We also get more frequent access, so the sport is actually taking place for us. You'll see a lot of overlap here with the sports section itself. It's more constant. I can access that sport all the time. Of course, we also get that international access. Okay, international access, I mentioned it earlier, so a lot of overlap here with that original block. We also get an improved up arrow standard of play, so the standard of play gets better and better and better, and because of that becomes more exciting to watch, right? It becomes more appealing. And we also go and get to sit in things like better stadia. So as far as spectators go, this seems like a really good deal, right? But what are the negatives? Well, first of all, it's the spectators who are paying for it. So you get the notion of subscription fees, okay? And this can be really expensive. And maybe, and certainly at times in one's life, you can't afford to watch. Now just think about that a second. People can't afford to watch, let's say, a football match. That seems pretty extreme, doesn't it? What about disruptive coverage? The idea, let me just write this in, disruptive coverage. The idea that, for example, the media company needs to run advertisements very, very commonly. You will have experienced this, especially on commercial stations, of course. You would also see that the fan, the spectator becomes, I like this phrase, a consumer in their own home. Think about that. You're sitting, probably in your pajamas, watching a boxing bout, and you get sold to whatever they're trying to sell you through those apps. It's weird, right? You're sat in your front room. Now, We can also say that the quantity of sport can disrupt. I personally know people who have been divorced because one member of the, let's say, marriage is spending all of their time watching football. This can be an issue, and I think that's where we are. So let's finish that off. Evaluative again. So really, the takeaway from this tutorial, guys, is you must be evaluative for the spectator, for the performer, and for the sport itself. The impact of the media. Thank you.